I'm Tara Bennett for Sci-Fi Wire, and I have the great privilege of being able to talk to Tania del Rio today. Hi, Tania.
Hi.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into comics.
I was kind of lucky, actually. I studied animation in art school, but I also took every comics class that they offered because I love comics so much. I grew up reading comics, so I loved comics. I just didn't think I could make a job out of it. So I studied animation thinking that was the more predictable course for me. But then when I graduated, I couldn't find any animation work because that happened to be during the time when Disney closed down their studio, and it was just like bad time for animation. And so I was kind of freaking out. Yeah. And I had a lot of time on my hands, so I was just kind of drawing comics on my own just for fun. And Tokyo Pop, which is the big manga publisher, they had a contest called Rising Stars of Manga, and I entered it. I got runners-up, and it happened to be published like a little blurb in like a local paper, because I lived in Westchester, New York at the time, and just so happens that Archie's offices were located right there, and they read the newspaper, and they called me up directly and said, hey, do you want to pitch us a Sabrina comic? So it literally just came out of the blue, and I was like, yeah, of course. And so I pitched them, and they liked it, and that's how it all began.
Were there specific artists, since you were a comics fan beforehand, you studied, in a different medium, were there artists that really impacted what you think is your style now?
Yeah, growing up, I was definitely influenced by, Disney animation, for sure, like Lion King, The Little Mermaid. I was kind of growing up during all those great films, and Miyazaki films were, Miyazaki as a whole was just a huge influence to me ever since I first saw My Neighbor Totoro. But other artists like Wendy Pini from ElfQuest, I loved her, and I just, like I said, read all kinds of comics growing up. I read, X-Men, I read everything, so I kind of feel like I was a melting pot of all these different influences that I had. And of course, all the manga I like to read too, from Japan, like Rumiko Takahashi and Yayoi Ogawa. I just loved all these different creators.
What do you do now when it comes to filling yourself with new inspiration?
I definitely am always reading, and I've also learned to kind of go outside my own genre, which is something I didn't do as much when I was younger. I really just wanted to read what I like to read. And so I do like to look at other art styles. I watch a lot more films now than I used to. I wasn't really interested in movies or, so I just kind of feel like I've broadened that a little bit. But at the same time, I feel less dependent on that, because when I was younger, I think I was still searching for my style. And I worried that my style was too much like this person's or that person's, and I wasn't quite sure what my own voice was. So now I don't feel as hungry for inspiration in that same way. I still gather it, but it's not as desperate.
Vital. As you said, it was really a lot about confidence for you, figuring out who you were, what your style was, not filtering out the voices. How did that really allow you then to create your own book, like Warren the 13th, where you felt like, I'm ready, I have stories inside of me, now's the time for me to do this?
Well, that was also born of a collaboration with the artist Will Staley, and we also went to college together, and we've been creative collaborators since then. So it kind of helped to have a creative partner who pushed me along too, because we created Warren back in college. He created the character, I created some of the story to go with it, and I wrote a novel back in college based on the same character, but it wasn't ready yet because I wasn't ready yet, so it was pretty bad. But over the years, it was something we both wanted to keep pursuing. And I don't know, I guess the right time just came around. We met at the publisher Quirk, they do that kind of weird stuff, and it seemed like a good fit for Warren. So we approached them, and they liked it enough to go for it. So it's same kind of thing. It just took time for the idea to grow and mature, and for the confidence to grow. And also having a creative partner who is on the same page helps a lot.
What's the creative process for you? How do you guys go back and forth with developing and writing and the art, and how close are you guys with it, and how much do you get to let each other breathe in developing?
We collaborate a lot. I mean, there's definitely a lot of phone calls. He lives in Seattle, so there's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, a lot of back and forth. A lot of brainstorm. We love to brainstorm. That's something we've always done. It's we just sit there for hours and just talk about ideas and just let things flow. And then after we do that, then I'm really inspired, so I'm able to sit down and actually just write things out. And then once I do that, then I send it back to him, and he, sometimes he gets new ideas based on it, and we kind of go back and forth. And now we have the third element, which is the editor. And so he's been helpful too, because once we develop something, we can send it to him, and he has ideas as well. But as far as that goes, and then also with the art too, like Will show me what he's working on and I'll have comments about that. So it's just very much like the whole process, we're working very closely together in developing the story. And there are points like when I'm writing the actual draft, which takes a few months, like that's when I'm just kind of holed up and doing my own thing. And when he's doing the art for the book and he's doing his thing. So there are times we kind of just let each other do our thing, but we do check in quite a lot.
You know, the second book is coming out in the series, and when you're thinking about the success of the first one, and then you're thinking, where do we want to go with Warren next? What were the thoughts of what the second book needed to be, and what you guys were interested in doing with the character still?
It's a good question. The first book, I mean, any first book in the series is really about just setting up the world and setting up the characters. So in some ways it was a little more restrictive because we had to get so much of the groundwork placed. So we actually had a lot more freedom with the second book to kind of take the story anywhere we wanted, which was daunting and exciting at the same time. We did know that the first book took place almost exclusively in the hotel where Warren works and lives. So we knew for the second book we wanted to take it out of the hotel. Yeah. And yeah, I think I wanted to set it in the forest because that's kind of stems from my Miyazaki influence. I love these weird witchy forests where all these weird creatures roam, and so that's kind of where I wanted to take the story there.
What has it opened up for you guys storytelling wise, being able to take it out of, you know, the confines of the hotel, putting it now in the outside, the exterior? Did it in its own way kind of pose its own problems of how expansive do we make this?
It did, and at some points we did have to rein ourselves in because I know my first draft was twice as long as the final draft, and so there was a lot that needed to be cut out. And also Will was like, just try not to write too many just straightforward scenes. Like he has to illustrate this, so he's like, can you just do some like waterfall scenes or cave scenes? Like, can you like mix it up a little bit? So from his point of view, he wanted more variety as far as the scenery goes, and where I was thinking more just pure storytelling as far as, oh, I want to go through the forest. And so that's kind of how we work together. Like, you know, I'll write the thing and then he'll suggest ideas based on that.
Now that you're at the cusp of knowing that you can continue to make these new stories, what's kind of the advice that you've learned in the process in terms about the confidence that you need or the skills that you've learned to be able to feel like that's a direction you can go now?
The biggest advice I could give is just to do it. And because I still have doubts. Like, I'm confident compared to where I was 10 years ago, but I still have the days where I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I can't believe I'm doing this. No one's gonna like this. All that stuff, it still happens every step of the way. And I think the only advice I can give is just, you have to push through it. There's no other choice. Like, you have to shut out the voices the best you can. And you can even acknowledge, yeah, what I'm working on right now is really stupid and I hate it, but I'm still gonna work on it anyway. And, you know, that's, you know, and some days I don't get much done. Like, some days I just can't do it, and some days I get like a whole bunch done. So it just, you know, you have to be forgiving with yourself and be patient with yourself and let the process play out the way it does.